Welcome to the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, a show that features conversations with the trailblazers, thought leaders, decision makers, and investors who are defining the gaming and esports space. On the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, we take a journey into this dynamic industry and start to decode and reveal who and what's making news. It's about connecting, and it's about sharing the stories and vision of the people who make gaming and esports a global phenomenon. And now, please welcome your host, student of the game and connector to the esports community, Tommy Knapp.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tommy Knapp, and this is an all-new episode of the All About the Game podcast presented by the Ultimate Gamer. On today's show, I have a conversation with Crystal Mills, a writer for the Esports Insider and Benzinga, as well as host of the podcast Power Level. The Esports Insider, founded in 2016 and based in London, presents the latest news from across the esports industry, covering interviews, events, opinion pieces, and more. Benzinga is a dynamic and innovative financial media outlet with a division that is a one-stop shop for all things gaming. And the Power Level podcast is a show where the hosts awkwardly geek out about the trending topics in video games, esports, and the tech that powers them. Crystal started out our conversation by talking about her busy writing career, which she juggles with another full-time occupation in pediatric surgery. Her love for games started at a young age across various titles and merged with her love of writing, which inspired her to start a blog around 2010. She parlayed her writing skills into roles with both Benzinga and Esports Insider, and today is one of the foremost experts covering the industry. Please join me now for my conversation with Crystal Mills. So first of all, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So I haven't really talked to many writers in the space, and one of the things I do to kind of, just to get to know each other a little bit, because I haven't spent any time with you. I interview a lot or talk or have conversations with a lot of people I know already, but we haven't gone through that. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions to start, and then we'll go probably back to the origins of when you started gaming and got into this whole craziness of esports and gaming. So the first thing I want to say, and this is I think this is straight off of, you're posting all over the place, but something about a wannabe Power Ranger. Yeah. So what's that all about?
Oh gosh. Okay. So my parents put me in martial arts when I was like 5 years old.
Okay.
And a lot of that was fueled by my love of Power Rangers.
Okay.
So that was one thing, like in school, people would ask us, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone's like, doctor or a lawyer. And I want to be a Power Ranger.
Right.
And that didn't really change, ever. So,
right. So do you have a favorite? I don't even know them. I know that there's the Ninja Turtles, right? There's 4 or 5 of those, and I think they're all Donatello and Michelangelo. Who are the Power Rangers? Do they have names, or are they just all colors?
They have names, but they're I don't even know how many seasons there are of it now where they all just change. But I always wanted to be the first female Red Ranger before it actually happened.
All right. Yeah. See, it's very vivid in your mind. I love it. Yeah.
I had plans.
For sure. Well, it's never too late, by the way.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So a couple other things, it's all, you post it, so you can talk about it. So it says you're a coffee addict. So do you wake up in the morning, you just start sucking down coffee? Is it all day or?
Actually, I have a weird schedule because you would think that I would be drinking a lot of coffee during the day, but I work night shifts in pediatrics.
Okay.
So we stay up all night, and that's when I'm usually chugging a bunch of coffee.
Wow.
So yeah, since then I've started kind of developing a taste for it. So yeah.
So that's pediatrics, and you're in Nashville, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about Nashville. I've only been once. I was there for 3 days, and I had a really good time. But it's one of those cities. And I'll tell you a quick story. So you go into travel a lot of times, and you have expectations, right? Mm-hmm. And I started really traveling back when I was in my early 20s. And I went, and this is really going to make me sound really ignorant. So I'm throwing myself under the bus here, but I went to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. It was beautiful. It was a great resort town. And then I traveled down to Mexico City because we couldn't get out of Puerto Vallarta. We were on what they call buddy passes. So you only paid $50, but you had to wait for a seat to open up. And for 7 days, the seats were all booked because it was during spring break. So we had to take a bus 16 hours to Mexico City. And so we drove through a lot of areas in Mexico that aren't that pretty, right? Puerto Vallarta was beautiful, but that wasn't. So then like 2 years later, I was asked if I wanted to go to Spain. Okay. Completely different country. They speak Spanish, obviously. And I was like, no, I don't really want to go to Spain because of my experience of driving through Mexico from Puerto Vallarta to Mexico City. I was thinking Spain was going to be like that. And so my point is, like, my expectation was very low when I went to Spain. And then when I went to Barcelona and I went to Sevilla and it was absolutely phenomenal. It was great. So Nashville was kind of similar for me. I had this whole concept, this idea that Nashville was all like country music. And, you know, it was all, I mean, it's very nice, but it wasn't kind of what my expectation was. So have you lived there your whole life? And if you can explain a little bit about what Nashville is, because to me, Nashville, after I went, is a metropolitan city. It's so much going on there. It's very cool.
It is. I've only lived here in Nashville for about 3 years now, and I'm slowly starting to still kind of discover everything that it has to offer, because there's so many different things. I mean, obviously, if you are a fan of country music, there's a ton of that, more than I appreciate, to be honest. Right. But I mean, there's a lot of live music. Obviously, there's a lot of art, a lot of movies that go on. I mean, there's a little bit of everything. The nightlife is always doing something. I mean, it's incredible. You can go out, you know, any night and still find a nice crowd.
Right. Is it Broadway? What's the main street?
Broadway, yeah.
Broadway, right? But then there's these really cool kind of more niche, like when I think of New York City, like these areas that are, or Miami's got Wynwood. Like Nashville actually has a few areas that are like that are not Broadway, which is really commercialized.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have Broadway, you have Printer's Alley is another big one that people like to go drink and hang out at. I mean, a lot of music festivals. It is not even just like in the main city. Like everywhere else has something going on.
Yeah. Yeah, the live music scene there is unbelievable.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's on par with like Austin. I just think it's fantastic. So cool. So did you tell me though when you ended up there three years ago? But why did you move there?
I actually moved there because of my job at the hospital. So I work in pediatric surgery at Vanderbilt. So as soon as I finished school and got the job, we packed up from Chattanooga, which is about 3 hours away, and been here ever since. And we love it.
Wow. Yeah. So you must see some amazing things. God bless you. I mean, that's got to be one of those jobs that's got to be extremely fulfilling, but also it's got to be very tough.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah. So then that takes you. So let's back up, because then we'll get into the writing, because obviously you're doing more than just pediatrics, which sounds like an incredible career on its own. But kind of rewind us and start from your origin story. How did you get involved in game? Are you a gamer by nature? It says something again. I'm just reading the stuff that you're talking. Call of Duty. You like are a huge Call of Duty fan. Your relationship with Call of Duty is on again, off again.
Yes. So yeah, I grew up with video games. My dad was always playing them, so he's the one that introduced me to everything. Grew up playing Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, all of that stuff. Call of Duty was what really pushed me into esports. So that was my first esports title. So I latch onto that quite a bit. And a lot of the stuff that I've been writing more for you guys has tended to kind of circulate that scene a little bit more, although now I'm branching out quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I've played a mixture of games. I'm still going to ramble about general video game topics on my social media platforms. But yeah, Call of Duty pushed me into esports around probably Modern Warfare 2, I think, when the youth scene started to explode and making their own videos and commentating over them, and I tried it a little bit. It was horrible.
All right. But when was that? When were you doing that?
Oh gosh, yeah, it was during Modern Warfare 2, definitely during Black Ops 2 as well. It was.
But what's that time frame? Give me an idea of the time frame. I always need a timeline on that stuff.
Oh gosh, when was that? That was probably 2010, 2011.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So
you've been in it for over a decade. You've been in it for a while.
Quite a while, yeah, quite a while.
Yeah.
And I started doing that a little bit more before I settled on writing, which is interesting because I've always been a writer. So I'm not really sure how that didn't, solidify first.
Right.
But yeah, it was a weird time.
Yeah. So you're a gamer and a writer. So talk about writing a little bit. So have you ever written a book, or are you more like short? You just like to write quick articles?
I like to write a little bit of everything. A book is definitely something that I would be interested in doing eventually. But when I first started, I didn't really have a direction. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. So I basically just started a blog and started publishing. I was writing like 10 to 15 articles a day on various things. And that's not including interviews that I would try to get, really bad features that were extremely unorganized and awful, but it gave me a portfolio to start off with, and from there I was able to start meeting connections, and that's when I realized that you could probably do something with this. So
And
it's been an
and
adventure.
this was when was that in the timeline? This
Oh
is in
gosh,
2010 as well, is it?
yeah, probably a little bit after.
Oh, so you've been writing for a long time.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I liked writing and I liked video games. So I like I said, started a blog and went from there and started making contacts, and it's just kind of evolved over time.
Yeah, see, I love that. And most of the people that I've talked to in the space that are innovating, are doing things in the space, they may not know, exactly what it is, the end game, when they start, but they start, they jump in and they start doing it. And I think that's a great point. I think especially on the content side, right? Whether you're a writer, whether you're a streamer, whether you're a content creator straight up, just start doing it. And as you start doing it, then you'll start finding out what you really enjoy doing. And then if you can actually parlay that into a career.
Absolutely. And then there's so much involved in content creating. It doesn't really matter what you're specifically doing, because no matter if you're streaming or you're making videos, you're creating a portfolio that you can show off to potential employers. So like, even if you don't realize that you love streaming and you've been streaming for a year and you think, oh, well, I have the skills that I could, be a host of something or some sort of broadcasting. Well, there's a lot that goes into that you can showcase, that you have proof of.
Right.
So yeah, I think jumping in and just getting started and creating is extremely important.
So since you're a writer, are you also a big reader?
I am a big reader. Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, and to this point, so I know William Collis, and I haven't had William on yet. We text back and forth, and I think we're on LinkedIn together. He's done his podcast is fantastic, The Business of Esports. He and Paul Dalibi, but he's releasing a book. I think it's coming out in August. And I said when I first started looking at the space about 3 years ago, that there's really very, very little out there as far as books go, right, that you could read. And there really wasn't that much you could even find just by Googling it 3 years ago. There was things here and there, Esports Insider, Esports Observer, and then there was, and then more and more. And now if you Google esports and gaming, forget about it. I mean, it's just Crystal Mills comes up number one. And after that, you can do whatever, right? But having said that, we're talking about potentially writing a book at some point. Do you think you'd go and you'd write something along the lines of a Tolstoy or, something more classic like that, or would you stick to esports and gaming, because we need it in esports and gaming?
Yeah, I don't know. I have like my moments where I jump in and I'm like, I'm gonna try out some fiction, and then I get in and I start outlining and I'm like, I can't do it. There's no way. It's horrible. I do think writing in sports is definitely something that I could potentially do in the future. It's something that I've been kind of toying with and looking at, but it's kind of hard to find an angle that hasn't already.
Yeah, I just lost you a little bit. Let me see if you come right back. You back? Yeah, we paused right now. I don't know if you can hear me. You back? Yeah, I see you. Okay.
I can hear you. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's such, first of all, it's such a massive space, right? Esports and gaming is such a massive space. And actually when I go out and meet people at DreamHack events and other events that are of a large nature, and you're talking about, you meet all these people that are doing so many cool things, and it's easy to kind of get off track because there are so many great things to do. So I think we need those books in the space, but finding the angle, I think that'll probably be the biggest challenge. So all the articles you're writing, and you just said you write up to maybe 10 or 12. And it's funny because you said that, because when I looked at Benzinga, and I want you to talk a little bit about Benzinga, I saw 8 posts like on June 18th last week. And I was like, there's no way that she writes 8 articles a day, but you do.
It varies, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was all like within that day, right? It wasn't like, yes, that's a lot. So let's get into that a little bit. How do you determine, well, tell us a little bit about Benzinga, first of all, how you got that role, and then tell me, how do you find your material? Because there's, again, so much to write about.
Okay. Benzinga is more of a financial media source. kind of consolidates all of the financial news that you're going to find in different industries. They focus on the stock market and stuff as well, and a bunch of other things that I have no clue what to even say about.
Right.
But they're getting to the point now where they're wanting to build an esports vertical with the option to, hopefully eventually have esports events and stuff in the future, especially for industry professionals and investors and people like that want to jump into esports but may not necessarily know what it's about yet. So right now I kind of have free reign as far as what we want to cover. So I'm trying to pull in a little bit of everything to kind of educate the people that may not necessarily know what it's about, but then also kind of cater to the audience that do know what esports is about and they want to find that site to kind of find their content on. So yeah, it's been really cool. We've been working for the past couple of months trying to kind of raise the page views, which we're doing a good job on, and building our list of contacts. So it's been fun.
So how many people are there aside from yourself trying to build up that vertical?
As far as I know, I am the primary writer for any sort of esports content. One of the other editors that I work with is also involved, but I think it's primarily between the two of us.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions I was asking, and whether it's for Benzinga or somebody else, and we can talk about Esports Insider as well, but when you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, do you know the next day what you want to write about? Obviously, we all got hit the other day with the mixer,
Yeah.
And we could talk about that. And that's obviously easy, right, for you to write about because you're like, okay, I have to write about this because it's just such big news.
Absolutely.
So do you pick different titles? Like you said, I mean, you have certain titles that you follow and you like. Do you look at certain segments of the industry? Because again, it's so big. So how do you attack it?
A lot of it comes from just sources that send me material.
Okay.
Say that there's an event that's going on and they're like, hey, this is you're the first person I'm contacting. We'd like you to cover this. So I always try to make that my priority. But it just depends on what comes over the news wire. Like I don't normally know what I'm going to write about before I get the news of it, which is usually pretty last minute.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where you kind of have to be flexible and just kind of have to make that time to get out what is going to be important versus the stuff that can kind of wait. So it's a little bit of time management.
Right. And is that like a generic news wire, or is that like anybody can see that, or is that something specific that you have access to?
Yeah, but I always use multiple sources. Thankfully, I've been able to formulate a good list of contacts of people that can contact me when they say, hey, this is breaking news. You need to cover this now versus, evergreen material that doesn't really matter right away. But, stuff with that, you get to be a little bit more creative and figure out different angles to kind of cover things or, ways to write things out that, other people aren't really writing about or communicating about. Just anything that I like to ignite conversation. So it's not necessarily just about pumping out news articles.
Right. So does that mean sometimes you actually take like a controversial angle maybe?
Sometimes, yeah. I try not to purposely press buttons. Some outlets tend to do that because they know that's how they're going to get views. And that's definitely not what I'm trying to do. But I do think that different views need to be posted about different things. And sometimes it is controversial. Sometimes it's not. It just kind of depends on what's going on at the time.
Yeah. So talk to me about maybe in the last month, what are 3 of the top things? Give me a couple stories that you've written about that are just things that either we know about because they're just so obvious, we've seen them before, or maybe even something that you found that was really, really interesting that maybe you were one of the few people to cover.
I don't know about one of the few people to cover, but I do think that one of the interesting things going around right now is the PS5 for sure. That's one of the things that I'm most excited about right now. So we've been covering the titles that have been revealed, the way the console looks, the specs that are going on behind it, how it's going to compete against Xbox, all of our predictions like that. That's just been a whirlwind right now.
And do you enjoy that? Is that a lot of fun writing about that kind of thing?
It is. Yeah, it is. And I have a lot of fun speculating and trying to come up, how much is it going to be priced, and kind of see how that plays out, because there's a lot that goes on that everyone's trying to put their 2 cents in and predict, and it's fun to kind of be a part of the conversation.
Yeah. And you're not one of those haters. Like there's so many people that whenever something comes out, everybody's got to have an opinion, right? And it's so funny because I'm not really like that. I tend to look at everything optimistically,
Hmm.
and I'll see the design and I'll be like, okay, it looks pretty cool or whatever. And then you'll read something and, there's just so many people that are like, oh my God, it's so awful. And it's just crazy, right? But having said that, when you look at that, okay, so you're writing about probably its specs, what it can do. You're writing about what it looks like. Who do you reach out to? You reach out to somebody inside it's only and like talk to them about, okay, how powerful is this unit and that kind of thing.
I mean, we try to. It's kind of hot or cold when you're trying to contact people in the industry like that, because with something like the PS5 where they're not really revealing everything yet, that it's going to be pretty hard to get information out of them.
Right.
So it's with something like that, you take the news as it comes and you broadcast that, but then you also try to get a little creative with it, do things that, not everyone else is wanting to get into because they don't necessarily know how, but predicting the prices and stuff is fun. Right. It's not necessarily groundbreaking right now because it hasn't been revealed, but it's fun to be able to ignite that conversation, because that's what it's all about for me is trying to communicate with other people and getting their own thoughts about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about a scoop that you've had, and this is ridiculous right now. My mind, the way your mind works, right? I'm thinking like there's all these crazy moments in time, history. We're going through some of that stuff right now, and there's stories that come out. But for some reason, my mind just went to Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have. It's been a while.
Right. So they're standing there, and all of a sudden the guy creates the science, he's a science guy, and he creates a storm that creates food, right? And so all the storm, and then he looks at her and says, "Aren't you a meteorologist?" So she has the big scoop, right? Because it's all these meatballs. Have you had a scoop, not with obviously food falling from the sky, but
I wish.
Yeah, right. Have you had any really kind of cool scoops where you were just the timing was so right, you think, and you were the first one to release it?
I more so now I'm starting to get to that point where it feels that way. And, now that we're talking about it, it is interesting timing because there are things that I can't necessarily talk about.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there are those moments where someone contacts you and you're like, am I the first person that you're contacting? Like, that's huge. Right. And it's nice to be able to get to that point where people are reaching out to you because they want you to share their news for them.
Right. Yeah. So you must be a good secret keeper.
I try.
Yeah, right. They have to give you the okay. Yeah, that's interesting to me. And there's all kinds of different shows that I watch, and you watch the reporters when they have to kind of hold back, and then you also have to protect your sources. And so it's a fascinating world to me. And I think you're right based on what you just said. I think because of the network you've built now and all the stories that you've written, you're becoming a go-to person to release stories, and so you're probably going to get more and more and more of that stuff across your desk. But you can't tell me anything right now that
I can't think of anything specific at the moment.
Right. Yes, you can. You just can't tell me.
Good try.
So talk to me a little bit. We're kind of, this is unusual. Usually I try to go in sequence, but now I'm going to jump back a little bit because I did see something on Optic Gaming. Did you do some work with Optic?
I did. Yeah. I was actually closer toward the beginning of my career. I had first started in esports with Esports Nation, where we covered Call of Duty. And after that, Optic Gaming formulated Optic Intel. They were trying to, do their own thing with esports journalism. And a lot of it was still centered around Call of Duty at the time, because that's, primarily what Optic was known for then. And I contacted them immediately just to be a part of it. And I ended up being the editor-in-chief of Optic Intel, and I helped them build the platform. I did copy work for Optic Gaming's main website, just doing a little bit of everything, leading an editorial team. It was a new experience. Was
that kind of cool, though? I mean, to work for a team specifically?
It was, yeah. I mean, it didn't last very long. They ended up selling it, and, things happened. But it was interesting because it was my first time really jumping into the leadership part of journalism and leading an editorial team and kind of sifting through all the challenges that kind of presents, and then dealing with the people that are higher up that, didn't necessarily know anything about writing or journalism. They just knew that it needed to be out there.
Right. And so right now, it seems to me, and I could be wrong here, but most of what you do is freelance. So what does that mean as a freelancer?
It means that I pay a chunk of my fees toward taxes, and then I sit and cry about it.
But you can have multiple, I guess the point is that you can write for multiple like places, right?
Yeah. Usually you find multiple clients and work with them. Because like, I mean, I'm writing with Esports Insider primarily and Benzinga. Those are my two main ones. But I've been writing for other places like Supernix, which is doing more educating kind of 101 stuff to try to help pull more people into esports. It's a good mixture of things going on. So yeah, when you're a freelancer, you kind of have that freedom to do kind of whatever you want to do.
Right. But when you're writing, so if you write an article for Benzinga, you can't then provide that to Esports Insider, right? You have to
No,
write
definitely not.
content, right.
Yeah.
So is there a time when there's ever, I don't say a conflict, but when you're writing about something and it's like, okay, I'm writing about this for this publication, and then you have to write for the other publication about the same subject?
It's happened a couple of times, but I mean, in those instances, it's easy to, you have to be transparent. You just have to communicate and be like, hey, you know that I'm writing this at this, other platform. There's no way that I can cover both stories and different platforms like that. It doesn't work out that way. And most editors understand that and they'll work with you. But I mean, there are the ones that, don't want you to compete. So you have to be careful as far as that goes. And, that's all contract reading and stuff too. So it's something that you kind of have to play by ear as you get into it.
Yeah. That's interesting to me, the freelancing side of things. Do you sign an agreement for like 6 months or a year, or is it just week by week or day by day or hour by hour?
It varies. It varies. There's so many different things. I mean, some places you do like, you have a monthly quota and that's how you get paid. And that's part of the contract. Some people, my gosh, I can't talk. People will pay you per article. It's so new in so many ways that I've had people that are big in the industry contact me and be like, hey, how do you pay people to do this? Like, what are your rates? How do you pay a team of journalists to do this stuff? And I'm like, it literally just depends on what you're wanting to cover.
Right. Yeah. And I'm assuming most of this you can do from your house. So this part of your career hasn't probably been affected too badly by Corona and COVID-19, but your pediatric side, I mean, it's got to be completely different, right?
Yeah. I mean, when everything first started and places were shutting down, a lot of the elective cases were being postponed. So that wasn't as busy, but on my end, because I work night shift, it's trauma. So that's something that you can't really predict. It doesn't matter what's going on around us. If kids are hurt, then we usually get them. But yeah, as a writer though, I mean, I've been busier than ever because of it, because everyone's jumping into it right now.
Right. So have a lot of your articles taken on a slant of the pandemic?
Quite a bit have,
Right.
not so much anymore. We're trying to get to the point now where it's kind of leveling out and returning to a little bit of, normalcy. But yeah, for a little bit there was a lot of stuff covering COVID and how it was affecting events, places shutting down, moving to online tournaments, how companies are being affected, and even how traditional sports are starting to move over into esports in order to retain an audience and try to present something that's a little bit more normal to people.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that. I also like to know, I mean, Black Lives Matter obviously is a very, very big topic that's so important right now that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But and for both actually, for the coronavirus and Black Lives Matter, all the charity work that's being done, it seems like you're probably writing about that. And then you did mention the fact that all these traditional sports athletes are looking at esports and gaming and content creation and streaming as a way to still stay in touch with their fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Two very different topics. I apologize.
No. I mean, it's there's so much that's going on. It's hard to focus on just one thing. But I mean, specifically as far as sports moving into esports, I mean, you're seeing, the NBA has started having online tournaments. You have Formula One racing. All of these people are jumping into, the esports that never really maybe got into it before. The first player that comes to mind is Ariel Powers, who's a WNBA player
she's going to be on in a couple weeks.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she plays a ton of, NBA 2K. She plays Apex Legends. I mean, she's doing a lot of it right now and broadcasting and streaming as well. So I think I'm curious to see how things are going to change as far as seeing these traditional sports athletes kind of jump into esports even after COVID kind of disappears. Hopefully it does disappear. Yeah. So it's interesting. Things are definitely changing.
Yeah, things are changing. And so you're covering that stuff as a writer, which is fascinating as it is, but you also have your own or is it called Power Level Podcast now?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
I never know for sure because, and I told Ryan Johnson this when I had him on a little while ago. He spells community CX MMUINITY. As a writer, does that get like crazy? Like, I mean, because your podcast it's Power Level, but it's POW3LVL, or right? Something
it is
like
on Twitter. Right? It is on Twitter just because the Power Levels are already taken.
Okay. All right.
But yeah.
Yeah, so that for you, because as a writer, everything has to be, punctuation has to be right, spelling has to be right? So it's got to be crazy when you deal with gaming, because gaming has so many where they just eliminate all vowels.
I know, and everyone's screen names and what they go by is just insane.
Yeah. So do you have to do you have to look at your stuff, but when you send it over to an editor, you just said that, I didn't even think about that, like a screen name, because a screen name can be anything, right? Mm-hmm. With numbers and dashes, and you want to make sure that you present that correctly when you write the article. So do you have help? Does somebody then proofread that and go back and actually look at those names?
I mean, yeah,
Right.
It's interesting because, working with someone like Esports Insider, who, everyone there obviously knows what they need to know about esports. So turning into, these weird screen names and stuff like that, it's not really that big of a deal. They understand, and they often already know who they are anyway.
Right.
But for Benzinga, for example, where the majority of my editors don't really know what's going on and, what these people are going by and everything, I have to sometimes double check and be like, hey, this doesn't need to be edited. This is correct. Please don't touch this.
Right. So talk to me about, I've got a couple other notes here, and the things that I put down a little while ago, and I probably pulled them from your Twitter feed, but Esports Awards 2020, is that something that maybe the magazine is, or the Esports Insider is doing, or who is doing that, and are you a part of it?
I am not a part of it unless you want to nominate me. Wink, wink.
Okay. I'll nominate you, of course.
No, I mean, the nominations are going down right now. I'm not sure. I want to say sometime in August is when the next step happens, but I've never really been a part of the Esports Awards. I'd like to be. I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I like how they want to highlight different figures in the industry, and I think the recognition is necessary, and I'm excited for it no matter what.
Yeah, those award shows are great. And I kind of jumped over this. We were talking about how you spell your podcast, but what are you covering? What are you talking about in your podcast? How often, what's the format like? How often are you taping?
We're trying to work out the kinks right now. We initially planned for a monthly episode. I think we're going to go down to shorter episodes and do it either once or twice a week. But Power Level covers a little bit of everything. We cover esports, but we also cover a lot of the general video game news. So our latest episode will be about the PlayStation 5 and the games and kind of what we're looking forward to and what we're predicting. And we usually plan things, in advance. And it's fun because a podcast like that kind of gives you the freedom to, test the waters and see what you like to do versus what doesn't necessarily work. So we're having fun just kind of playing with it right now and finding our spot with it.
Are you doing that, co-hosting it, or is that on your own?
I'm co-hosting it. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a story that I'd like to throw out at you that I'd like to know. So Ninja and Shroud both got paid out, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm, they did.
Yeah, are you gonna get into that and dig deeper with either Ninja or Shroud and find out what's going on with?
I might try. I'm curious because I know Ninja. What was reported? Ninja reportedly got $30 million out of it, and Shroud got $10 million, supposedly,
right.
Which is huge for them. And now that they're both technically free agents, they're not going to quit content creating. So where are they going to go to? Is, after all the controversy that surrounded Ninja leaving Twitch, is he get a return to Twitch, or is a platform like YouTube going to swoop in and snatch him up? I don't know.
Yeah. And I wonder if they're going to snatch him up, or if they just, if they stay free agents for a while. What's the upside to that?
I mean, the upside is that they just both got a crap ton of money, so they have the freedom to do whatever they want versus, a lot of the other streamers who were partners who they have to find something to do. So I don't see Ninja or Shroud taking too long of a break. I think they'll sit down and they'll see what kind of deals they can get, and they'll go from there, but they're not going to be gone for long.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. When you look at right now with the pandemic and what's going on, where do you see us going with real events coming back on live? Do you hear of anything that's going to be happening soon, or do you see us staying virtual and digital for a while? And if that's the case, what events do you see coming up that are virtual and digital that you think are really big? I mean, because there's a lot of these. A lot of the publishers, a lot of the orgs, a lot of the tournament organizers have gone to the digital format, and they're still in play, and they're still big money, and they're still competing. So what's the big news out there right now in the esports space?
As far as big news, I mean, it's so unpredictable, right? Because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen with the pandemic. We want these actual public events to return, but at the same time, I think jumping into it full force and trying to plan for these things is going to be problematic. I don't know how it's going to affect events in the future, if they're going to do something where maybe they just have the players that are there and they tape it and we view it online. I don't know. Right. There's so many different avenues that they can take. And that's the cool part about esports, though, is that we have the freedom that we can do that, and it doesn't really harm us versus traditional sports. So it's one of those things I can't really definitively say what's going to happen, but I think things are going to change. I don't know necessarily how they're going to change.
Can you hear me? Because it looks like we paused again.
I can hear you.
Okay. As a journalist, and again, the way we're working from home now, are you able to cover a lot more than if you had to, go to the events live, right? And actually fly, if you're going to the Dota Championship, fly overseas and cover that live. I mean, I'm assuming that's a kind of an easy question to answer, right? but what I guess more the question is what is the biggest difference? Because one of the first pods I did with Joey Brander earlier about a month ago, we talked about productivity. And even though travel is very important and going and seeing events live and meeting people face to face is critical, when you can't do it, your productivity can go way up just simply because you don't have to travel as much. But I certainly, we're coming towards the end anyway. There's a lot of stuff that we could just keep talking, because I could ask you about, I could go back to like Esports Insider, and I could ask you about every single story that you've written over the last, month, which would be really interesting to me to do that. But it would take, your whole day up. So, but I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of tell us anything that you're working on that is super exciting or interesting that is happening in the next 3 to 6 months. Whether it's at Benzinga or Esports Insider, or if it's just something, on the writing side that is just something you're doing, whether it's writing a novel or just the articles every day. And where can we follow you too? Because I would like to make that one of the things that I do on a daily basis now.
Yeah, absolutely. I am primarily on Twitter. You can follow me at CKM Writes. I post every single day, so I'm pretty active. So yeah, that's my primary social media. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't even know how to begin to share that. Just search for my name and hope for the best.
Right. Well, we always post that in show notes after the show's over. We'll put
there. You go. But yeah, as far as exciting stuff going on, there's quite a bit of stuff happening right now. I'm getting more into podcasting, more into streaming. So there's a lot more video content that's going to be coming out. A lot of work going on with Benzinga. So I'm really excited to see kind of where that goes. Hopefully that we'll start getting the support where we can build a team and go from there and start providing a lot more content. Yeah, I mean, the door is open. I'm working with Women in Games, trying to help promote diversity and inclusion for women, which is fantastic. So I'll be doing some speaking with them fairly soon. So, I mean, there's just a mixture. There's a ton of stuff always happening.
Games. Who's leading that up? Because I have somebody on the podcast. Is it Nicole Pike, or who's leading the Women in Games charge?
I just got contacted by David Smith, who interviewed me. He introduced me to the Discord and everything, and I haven't yet been introduced to everyone else yet, but I know that it's steadily growing. And there's a lot of different webinars and stuff that are going to be happening. So there's going to be quite a few people involved.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I believe I have at least one or two people that are going to be on talking specifically about that. So that's very exciting. And you mentioned streaming. So kind of as we come up to a close here, there's a big difference between streaming and doing a podcast. So how do you stream? What do you stream? Are you playing Call of Duty when you stream?
I play a mixture of different things.
And do you go for like 6 hours, or how long do you stream for?
It depends. When I first started, I was going way too long with streams, and it was taking time away from everything else. So I'm trying to formulate a schedule that'll kind of complement my writing and podcasting. But I play a variety of things, Call of Duty being one of them. And it's different. It's different to kind of jump into all of these different areas of content and seeing how it works.
Yeah. Do you have a different personality when you're streaming? Are you like, you're screaming in the microphone?
I don't think so. I'm just as awkward no matter where I am.
Oh, that's right. And you called something. It was something that's called awkward. What's your awkward handle?
I
don't know. You go back and you look at it. You find it. You've got something in there. I just closed all my tabs. Otherwise, I'd look it up myself. But I think it was either on your LinkedIn page or your Twitter where it's something awkward is like one of the.
I think it's just me. I think it's just me.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that was just writing about that. And your cats. How many cats do you have?
I have 2.
Okay. And they're gamers as well, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Well, very cool. This has been great. I'm, for one, am very excited that we've met because there may be some scoops and some stories that I can let you know about with the Ultimate Gamer.
That'd be great
in the near future because we're doing some really cool stuff over here. And then, like I said, I'm just going to start following you because you've been in this space now for over 10 years. So some of the stuff you're writing about is very dynamic, and I just think the space is incredible. What a great space to be writing about right now.
It is. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Crystal. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Ciao. I'd like to thank Crystal for sharing her time, experience, and knowledge with us today. I have such an appreciation for journalistic talent. The ability to craft interesting, timely, worth reading stories day in and day out is not just talent. I think it takes tenacity, creativity, persistence, and curiosity. That would be more than enough, but when you learn that Crystal is also a full-time surgical technologist in pediatrics, all I can do is stand in awe. It's amazing. You can listen to Crystal again now, and you can also find timestamped segments of the show, links to her social pages, and more information about her writing, projects, and media in the show notes. If you enjoyed our discussion, please let us know. Continue the conversation with me across all social platforms and become part of the Ultimate Gamer community today by subscribing at ultimategamer.com. We release a new show every day of the week, Monday through Friday, so be the first to join us for some outstanding upcoming guests and/or dive back into the library of previous All About the Game pods to hear from some of the most brilliant minds in the space. Experts like former NFL All-Pro and founder of Sports ID, Ryan McNeil, co-founder and VP of Aftershock Media Group, Amanda Solomon, and head of esports at Full Sail U, Bennett Newsom, just to name a few. You can find all these episodes and more on the Ultimate Gamer website, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your pods. And finally, please like, rate, and review the show. It helps us to reach the gaming community, to spread the word and share the wisdom of our guests, as well as some of the most thought-provoking stories in the industry. Shout out, as always, to the Ultimate Gamer. I look forward to being with you on the next All About the Game podcast.